The Guardian's Challenge. The eternal hum of machinery filled the underground chamber, a stark contrast to the ancient symbols etched into its weathered walls. Thera stood motionless, her crystalline skin catching the blue glow of modern emergency lights that had been installed alongside the timeless rooms. For 3,000 years, she had guarded the Nexus, an artifact that predated human civilization itself. Time had changed the world above. But down here, in this sanctum beneath what humans now call New Amsterdam, her vigilance remained unchanged. The maintenance elevator's sudden wear broke her contemplation. Another one. They never stopped coming, despite her best efforts to discourage visitors. The Department of Metropolitan Infrastructure had insisted on installing modern systems in these underground chambers, claiming structural necessity. She had allowed it, knowing that adapting was sometimes the best way to preserve the old ways. The elevator doors opened with a soft chime, revealing a figure in a gray jumpsuit. He carried a worn toolbox, his boots scuffed from daily wear. His name badge read Rook. No last name, just Rook. Dark eyes surveyed the chamber with quiet intensity, taking in details others might miss. "Ma'am," he nodded politely, seemingly unfazed by her otherworldly appearance. "Got a work order for the Eastern Junction box. Won't take long." Thera's lips curved into a practiced smile, one that had deterred countless others before him. "The junction box can wait. You feel it, don't you? The pull. They all do when they first enter. Why don't you admit the real reason you're here?" Rook paused, setting down his toolbox. "The pull, yes. But the junction box isn't an excuse. It really does need maintenance." He pulled out a tablet, showing her the work order. "Though I'll admit, I've been curious about this place. The patterns in the power fluctuations aren't normal." His honesty caught her off guard. Most tried to hide their true intentions behind grandiose claims or false bravado. This one was different. "The Nexus affects nearby electrical systems," she explained, gesturing to the artifact that dominated the center of the chamber. It appeared different to each viewer. Some saw a sword, others a crown, a few perceived a simple stone. "What do you see when you look at it?" Rook studied the Nexus carefully, his head slightly tilted. A broken circuit, parts missing, waiting to be completed. He reached for his toolbox again, but not to grab a tool. From inside, he pulled out an old brass compass. "Found this my first week on the job. Doesn't point north down here. Points to that." He nodded toward the Nexus. Thera's interest deepened. Thousands have tried to understand the Nexus. Scholars, warriors, self-proclaimed chosen ones. None have succeeded. "Understanding and fixing are different things," Rook replied, pulling out a multimeter. "Sometimes you don't need to understand why something works to know how to make it whole again." "You think it's broken?" Thera asked, a dangerous edge in her voice. "Everything needs maintenance eventually, even things that last forever." He held up the multimeter, its display flickering wildly. "See these readings? There's a pattern, like a machine running on emergency power, waiting for someone to flip the right switch." Thera moved closer, her crystalline form casting prismatic patterns on the walls. "And you believe you're qualified to maintain something beyond human comprehension?" Rook shrugged, his focus still on the readings. "I maintain the subway systems that millions trust their lives to every day. Nobody comprehends the whole system anymore. It's too vast, too complex. But we keep it running, piece by piece, circuit by circuit. Why should this be different?" "Because this isn't one of your human machines," Thera countered, though she found her certainty wavering. "The Nexus is alive, in its way. It chooses who may approach." "Then let it choose," Rook said simply, taking a step toward the artifact. "I'm not here to conquer it or claim it. I'm here to help fix what's broken. If it doesn't want my help, I'll go back to my junction box." As he moved forward, the ancient runes began to pulse with a soft light. Thera tensed, ready to intervene if needed. She had seen the Nexus destroy those it deemed unworthy. But something was different this time. The light wasn't the usual threatening crimson. It was a gentle blue, matching the emergency lights above. Rook reached out, not to grab or command, but with the careful precision of someone used to working with delicate circuits. His fingers traced the patterns that only he could see, following the flow of energy that had eluded all others. "Interesting," he murmured. "The power's there, but it's stuck in a loop, like a breaker that won't reset." The chamber hummed, the sound rising in pitch. Thera watched in astonishment as the Nexus responded to his touch, its form shifting and changing, revealing circuits and connections that she had never seen in 3 millennia of guardianship. "That's not possible," she whispered, but the evidence was undeniable. The one who would finally unlock the Nexus's secrets wasn't a warrior or a scholar, but a simple maintenance worker who saw what everyone else had missed. Sometimes the most powerful artifacts don't need to be conquered or understood. They just need to be fixed. Defying expectations, the ancient chamber had changed in the hours since Rook's discovery. Modern diagnostic equipment now sat alongside millennia-old inscriptions, their screens casting an ethereal glow across the weathered stone. Thera watched as Rook worked, his movements precise and methodical, each action deliberate and respectful of the power he was dealing with. "You still haven't explained how you knew," she said, breaking the contemplative silence. "Others have tried for centuries to understand the Nexus. What made you see it differently?" Rook paused in his work, wiping sweat from his brow. The Nexus hummed before him, its previously dormant circuits now alive with possibility. "Back when I first started maintenance work, I had this supervisor, Ms. Zhang. She told me something I never forgot. Everything speaks, if you know how to listen." He gestured to the complex patterns now visible in the artifact. This wasn't speaking the language everyone expected. They were looking for magic, for divine proclamations, but it was speaking in voltages and frequencies all along. Thera moved closer, her crystalline form refracting the light from the newly awakened circuits. "And yet there is magic here, power beyond human understanding." "Maybe," Rook acknowledged, making a careful adjustment. "Or maybe it's just technology so advanced, it seems like magic. Either way, it needs help." He pointed to a particular pattern in the energy flow. "See this? It's like a bypass valve stuck halfway. The power can't flow properly." The chamber suddenly trembled, dust falling from ancient stones. Thera steadied herself, her expression growing concerned. "Something's wrong. The Nexus has never reacted this way before." Rook's diagnostic tablet began beeping urgently. "Power spike," he muttered, fingers flying across the screen. "It's trying to complete a sequence, but there's too much resistance." Deep in the walls, something ancient stirred. The runes that had remained dormant for millennia began to glow with an intense light, forming patterns that even Thera had never seen. A voice echoed through the chamber, speaking in a language lost to time. "You understand what it's saying?" Rook asked, noticing Thera's shocked expression. She nodded slowly, her eyes wide. It's a warning. And a revelation." She turned to him, her voice urgent. "The Nexus isn't just an artifact of power. It's a key, part of a vast network that once connected all corners of Earth, and it's been trying to restore those connections for thousands of years." Another tremor shook the chamber, stronger this time. Rook steadied his equipment, checking readings. "These energy levels are off the charts. If we don't stabilize it soon, the entire grid could collapse." Thera finished. "Not just here, but across the city." She hesitated, centuries of guardianship warring with the urgency of the moment. "What do you need?" Rook studied the patterns, his mind working through possibilities. "The Nexus is like a transformer that's been running in isolation for too long. It needs to be properly grounded, integrated into a larger system." He looked up at the modern electrical conduits running through the ceiling. "We might be able to use the city's power grid as a stabilizing force." "You want to connect an ancient artifact of immense power to New Amsterdam's electrical system?" Thera asked incredulously. "It's already connected." "In a way," Rook explained, pointing to his readings. That's what's causing the power fluctuations I noticed. But it's a chaotic connection. We need to make it intentional, controlled. Before Thera could respond, a new sound filled the chamber, a deep, resonant tone that seemed to come from the Nexus itself. The artifact's form began to shift, revealing more of its true nature. What had appeared as circuits and connections now formed a three-dimensional map, showing lines of power that spanned the globe. "It's beautiful," Thera whispered, seeing for the first time the full scope of what she had been guarding. "All these years, I thought I was protecting a weapon or a source of power. But it's more than that. It's a piece of a larger whole." Rook nodded, already adapting his plans to this new understanding. A network needs maintenance, regular connections. Isolation for too long can cause all sorts of problems. He pulled out his tablet again, starting calculations. If we can synchronize the Nexus's energy signature with the modern power grid, we might be able to give it what it's been missing: a connection to the world it's meant to serve. Another tremor rocked the chamber, more violent than before. Warning lights began flashing on Rook's equipment. "Whatever we're going to do, we need to do it fast," he said, gathering his tools. "The power buildup is reaching critical levels." Thera looked at the Nexus, then at Rook, making the decision that would break 3,000 years of tradition. "Tell me what you need me to do." As they worked together, guardian and maintenance worker, the chamber filled with a new kind of energy. Not just the raw power of the Nexus, but the combined force of ancient wisdom and modern understanding, working in harmony for the first time. The true test of their unlikely partnership was about to begin, and the fate of more than just their hidden chamber hung in the balance. The city above them, unaware of the drama unfolding beneath its streets, continued its daily rhythm, while below, two unlikely allies raced to prevent a catastrophe and perhaps unlock a power that had been waiting millennia to be properly understood. The price of power. Red emergency lights bathed the underground chamber as Rook and Thera worked against time. The Nexus pulsed with increasing intensity, its newly revealed network of power lines creating ghostly patterns across the walls. Above them, the first signs of their crisis were beginning to manifest. Subtle power fluctuations rippling through New Amsterdam's grid, causing momentary blackouts in the financial district. "The synchronization's not holding," Rook muttered, his fingers dancing across 3 different tablets simultaneously. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the chamber's cool air. "It's like trying to merge 2 different operating systems that speak completely different languages." Thera placed her crystalline hand on one of the Nexus's ancient panels, her form resonating with its energy. "The patterns are shifting faster now. Something's interfering with the harmonization process." A new alarm blared from Rook's equipment. He cursed under his breath, something he rarely did. "We've got company. Someone's trying to access the chamber's security systems from above." "Impossible," Thera said, her voice sharp. "This chamber has been hidden for millennia. Its existence is known only to a select few, and they wouldn't dare." The maintenance elevator's lights flickered to life. "We've got about 30 seconds, Rook announced, already moving to protect his equipment. "Whatever's coming down, it knows we're here." The elevator's descents seemed to take an eternity. When the doors finally opened, they revealed a figure that made even Thera step back in surprise. Director Blackwood of the Department of Metropolitan Infrastructure stood there, but she wasn't wearing her usual corporate attire. Instead, she was dressed in what appeared to be ceremonial robes, ancient symbols etched in golden thread across black fabric. "I must admit," Blackwood said, stepping into the chamber, "when I had that work order created, I never expected it would lead to this." Her eyes fixed on the Nexus, now fully awakened and showing its true nature. Centuries of careful planning, and a maintenance worker discovers what generations of initiates could not. Rook kept working even as he spoke, his focus split between the immediate crisis and the new threat. "You knew about this place, about what the Nexus really is. The Order of the Hidden Circuit has watched over this city's secret places for centuries," Blackwood replied, more followers in similar robes emerging from the elevator behind her. We've maintained the balance, kept the old powers dormant until humanity was ready. Ready for what? Thera demanded, moving protectively closer to the Nexus. Evolution. Blackwood spread her arms wide, indicating the chamber around them. This is just one node in a vast network of power points across the globe. The ancients built them as a foundation for humanity's next great leap forward. But the power must be properly controlled, channeled through those who understand its true purpose. Another tremor shook the chamber, more violent than before. Rook's tablets showed cascading failures beginning to spread through the city's power grid. "Your control is making things worse," Rook said, his voice steady despite the chaos. "The Nexus doesn't need to be controlled. It needs to be balanced, integrated. It's been trying to tell us that all along." Blackwood's expression hardened. "Step aside, maintenance worker. You've done well to awaken the node, but this is beyond your understanding. The Order will take it from here." "He stays," Thera declared, her crystalline form beginning to glow with an inner light. "For 3,000 years, I've guarded this place, waiting for someone who could truly understand its purpose. Your Order has watched from the shadows, but Rook is the first to see the truth. This power was never meant to be hoarded or controlled." The air in the chamber grew thick with tension as Blackwood's followers began to spread out, taking positions around the room. Ancient artifacts and modern tools were drawn forth, humming with their own strange energies. "The grid is becoming unstable," Rook reported, his attention still divided between his work and the growing confrontation. "If we don't complete the synchronization soon, we're looking at a cascading failure that could black out the entire eastern seaboard. Then stand aside and let us." Blackwood began, but her words were cut short as the Nexus suddenly pulsed with blinding intensity. The chamber's runes blazed to life, responding to some unseen signal. "It's starting," Thera whispered, her eyes wide with realization. "The network is trying to reestablish itself. After all these millennia." Ancient machinery groaned to life within the walls. The map of power lines displayed by the Nexus began to shift and change, showing new connections forming, old pathways awakening. The very air seemed to crackle with potential. "If we don't guide this properly," Rook warned, "the power surge could fry every electrical system in its path. We need to work together, all of us." Blackwood hesitated, centuries of Order doctrine warring with the undeniable reality before her. Another violent tremor rocked the chamber, and somewhere above, the sounds of panic began to filter down from the streets of New Amsterdam. Time was running out. The price of power was becoming clear. Work together, or watch everything they sought to protect crumble under the weight of ancient forces too long denied their true purpose. The choice they would make in the next few moments would determine not just the fate of the city, but perhaps the very course of human development itself. Bonds forged in fire. The chamber had become a battlefield of light and shadow. Energy coursed between the ancient walls as the Nexus power continued to build, while Blackwood's followers took up positions with their artifacts raised. Between them stood Rook and Thera, unlikely allies united in their understanding of what needed to be done. "The synchronization has to be perfect," Rook explained, his voice carrying over the rising hum of power. "We need to match the Nexus's frequency with the city's power grid exactly, or everything crashes." He looked at Blackwood, his expression resolute. "Your Order's artifacts, they can help stabilize the energy flow, but only if we work together." Blackwood's face was illuminated by the pulsing light of the Nexus. "You don't understand what you're asking. This power has been guarded for generations, kept separate from the modern world for a reason." "No," Thera interjected, her crystalline form now glowing with an inner light that matched the Nexus's pulse. "We were wrong. All of us. The separation is what's causing the problem. The Nexus was never meant to be isolated. It's part of a living system, and systems need to adapt to survive." Another tremor shook the chamber, more violent than before. Above them, the sounds of chaos in the city grew louder. Emergency sirens wailed as New Amsterdam's power grid continued to destabilize. Rook's tablets showed cascading failures spreading across the network. We're out of time. Director, please. Your order knows more about these energy patterns than anyone. Help us guide this integration, or watch everything you've tried to protect tear itself apart. For a moment that seemed to stretch into eternity, Blackwood stood motionless. Then, slowly, she nodded to her followers. The order adapts, or it dies. Show us what you need. What followed was a dance of precision and power unlike anything the ancient chamber had ever witnessed. Rook coordinated their efforts, his understanding of modern systems merging with the Order's ancient knowledge. Thera served as a conduit, her crystalline nature allowing her to channel and direct the enormous energies flowing through the chamber. The grid stabilizing in sectors 3 through 7. One of Blackwood's technologists reported, her artifact humming as it helped modulate the power flow. But the core frequency is still out of alignment. Rook's fingers flew across his tablets, making minute adjustments. We need to think of this differently. It's not about forcing the old system to conform to the new or vice versa. We need to create something entirely new, a hybrid protocol that can speak both languages. As if in response to his words, the Nexus's display shifted, its network of power lines reorganizing themselves into a new pattern. The map now showed not just the ancient power points, but also the modern electrical grid, the two systems beginning to interweave in complex ways. It's beautiful, Thera whispered, seeing centuries of guardianship transformed into something she had never imagined. This is what it was trying to tell us all along. The next step isn't about preserving the old or embracing the new. It's about finding the harmony between them. The chamber filled with a sound like distant bells as the synchronization began to take hold. The violent tremors subsided, replaced by a steady rhythmic pulse that seemed to beat in time with the city's own heart. But just as hope began to rise, a new alarm blared from Rook's equipment. Power spike. He shouted. Something's causing feedback in the system. The Nexus flared with blinding intensity, its energies threatening to overflow the carefully constructed channels they had created. Arcs of pure power lashed out, shattering some of the Order's artifacts and sending their wielders scrambling for cover. The integration is happening too fast, Blackwood called out, her robes smoking from a near miss. The modern grid can't handle this level of power. Thera stepped forward, her crystalline form now pulsing in perfect sync with the Nexus. Then we need to give it something else to focus on. A buffer until the integration can stabilize naturally. Rook's eyes widened as he realized what she was suggesting. Thera, no. The amount of energy we're talking about, it could destroy you. She turned to him, a smile playing across her luminous features. Everything changes. Rook, even Guardians have to adapt. Before anyone could stop her, she pressed her hands directly against the Nexus's core. The chamber erupted in light as Guardian and Artifact merged, becoming something entirely new. Through the blinding radiance, Rook could see Thera's form changing, her crystalline structure reforming itself into complex patterns that matched both the ancient runes and modern circuit designs. The power surge began to stabilize, channeling through Thera's transformed being. The violent energies that had threatened to tear the city apart were now flowing smoothly, finding a natural balance between old and new. As the light began to fade, the chamber's occupants saw what their collaboration had achieved. The Nexus still stood, but it was transformed, its ancient power now perfectly integrated with the modern world. And at its heart, Thera floated, her form now a bridge between two ages, neither fully ancient nor modern, but something gloriously in between. The crisis had passed, but the true implications of what they had achieved were only beginning to unfold. The world above would never be quite the same, and the bonds forged in this crucible of change would reshape the future in ways none of them could have imagined. When humanity prevails, dawn broke over New Amsterdam, painting the city skyline in hues of gold and amber. In the underground chamber, the air hummed with a new kind of energy, not the chaotic force that had threatened to tear the city apart, but a harmonious blend of ancient power and modern technology. Thera's transformed, being cast prismatic patterns across the chamber walls as she hovered near the nexus, her crystalline form now interwoven with streams of data and energy that flowed between the artifact and the city's power grid. Rook stood at his workstation, monitoring the integration with a mix of professional pride and personal concern. "The synchronization is holding steady," he reported, glancing at Blackwood and her remaining Order members. "Power efficiency across the grid has increased by 300%, and we're seeing unexpected benefits in everything from communications to environmental systems." Blackwood stepped forward, her ceremonial robes now bearing the marks of their ordeal. "The Order has existed for centuries to prevent exactly this kind of integration. We believe humanity wasn't ready." She paused, watching the elegant dance of energy through the chamber. "Perhaps we were the ones who weren't ready. Sometimes the best way to protect something is to let it grow." Thera's voice echoed through the chamber, her words carrying new harmonics that seemed to resonate with both the ancient stones and modern equipment. "I guarded this power for 3 millennia, never understanding that isolation was slowly killing it." Rook's tablets displayed a map of the city, showing the spread of the Nexus's influence through the infrastructure. Parks were blooming out of season, air quality had improved dramatically, and the city's notorious traffic grid had achieved an almost supernatural efficiency. "It's not just raw power," he explained, pointing to various readings. "The Nexus is teaching our systems, showing them how to work together in ways we never imagined. It's like watching evolution happen in real time." One of the younger Order members, her artifact still humming softly, spoke up. "But what about control? If this power spreads too far, too fast?" "Control was never the answer," Thera interrupted, her form shifting like quicksilver. "The ancients didn't build this network to be controlled, but to be nurtured. They knew humanity would eventually reach a point where technology and wisdom could merge. They were waiting for us to be ready for partnership, not dominance." The chamber's lighting shifted as Thera moved closer to the group, her presence now a perfect blend of otherworldly guardian and cutting-edge interface. Rook understood this instinctively. He saw the Nexus not as a source of power to be tamed, but as a system that needed maintenance and care. That understanding changed everything. Blackwood watched as her Order members began working alongside Rook, their ancient artifacts finding new purpose as interfaces between old and new. "So what happens now? The world above will notice these changes. Questions will be asked. Then we answer them," Rook said simply, not looking up from his work. "Honestly, the time for secrets is past. The real challenge isn't hiding this power anymore. It's teaching others to understand and respect it." A soft chime echoed through the chamber as another section of the city's infrastructure came into harmony with the Nexus. On Rook's displays, they could see the effects rippling outward, hospitals reporting miraculous improvements in their equipment's efficiency, schools finding their outdated computers suddenly operating at peak performance, even the city's waste management systems beginning to process pollution in revolutionary ways. "The ancients left us more than just power," Thera observed, her voice filled with wonder. "They left us a roadmap to our own potential. All we needed was someone who could see past the mystery to recognize the maintenance that was needed." Rook finally looked up from his work, meeting Thera's transformed gaze. "You know this is just the beginning. Other nodes will awaken now that this one has been properly integrated. The whole world is going to change." "Change was always inevitable," Thera replied, her form rippling with streams of data and light. "But now we can guide it, nurture it, help humanity take its next steps without losing touch with its past." She turned to Blackwood. "Your Order protected these secrets for generations. Now you can help teach others how to use them wisely." Blackwood nodded slowly, understanding dawning in her eyes. Not guardians of the past anymore, but guides to the future. She smiled, the expression transforming her stern features. "I suppose even ancient orders must evolve." The chamber, once a hidden vault of power, had become something new. A nexus point not just of energy, but of human potential. Above them, New Amsterdam pulsed with newfound vitality, its millions of inhabitants beginning to sense that something extraordinary had occurred during the night. "You know," Rook said, making one final adjustment to his systems, "when I came down here yesterday to fix that junction box, I never imagined I'd end up helping to revolutionize human civilization." Thera's crystalline form sparkled with what might have been laughter. The greatest changes often come from the simplest beginnings. A maintenance worker who listened to what others ignored. A guardian who learned to let go of ancient restrictions. An order that chose to evolve rather than resist. The first rays of morning sunlight found their way down through newly installed light wells, casting rainbow patterns through Thera's transformed being. In that light, the chamber seemed to pulse with possibility, not just of power or technology, but of wisdom finally finding its moment to bloom. Together, they had discovered that the true unthinkable wasn't in the wielding of great power, but in the humble recognition that sometimes the most profound revolutions begin with a simple act of maintenance. In the end, it wasn't force or destiny that changed the world. It was understanding, adaptation, and the quiet courage to see beyond the surface of things to the connections waiting to be restored. The sun rose fully over New Amsterdam, marking the dawn of a new age, one where the line between ancient and modern, between mystery and mechanism, had finally begun to blur into something greater than either. And somewhere in the depths of the city, in a chamber where impossibility had become reality, a maintenance worker's toolbox sat beside a transformed guardian's crystalline light, both silent witnesses to the truth that the greatest powers often lie not in the ability to command, but in the wisdom to connect, to repair, and to help things grow. The end.